Hey everyone on YouTube. I wanted to do another video today. I've been getting a little more traction on Instagram, so I've been spending a little bit more time there. If I look a little disgruntled, hair and makeup, well, I was out this morning early with the dogs and the two boys and then the horse. And I got back about an hour ago and made myself some eggs and sat on the couch for what I thought would just be a few minutes and woke up with two dogs on top of me and passed out like drooling. So that tells you everything you need to know about when you wake up early and do a lot of activity. It was really nice. I did work with a couple of clients this morning too, so I was already kind of a little burnt. But the reason I'm on here today, so let's talk about ghost hunting. So I wanted to talk about ghost hunting, and first of all, this is all entertainment, and God forbid I be an expert. I'm just don't have any idea what I'm talking about. So yeah, so there's my YouTube disclaimer. But I wanted to weigh in on the topic of what happened with that investigator who died after or during the Annabelle tour, that crazy demonically possessed doll that the original person who had it said, never move it. And which all they've done is move it and mess with it. And now I guess the plantation where it was at, I think, burned down, and now it's at a different location. And I mean, once the plantation burned down, I would think you would start to get the hint about stuff like this. So I wanted to address it because, I've dealt with a lot of paranormal phenomena. I'm not famous. I haven't had a TV show. Well, partially because I wouldn't back down on compromising myself. I went up for a lot of shows and filmed so many times, and people have amazing evidence of me with no special equipment and stuff showing up in broad daylight. Yes, when I lived in Hollywood, I was at several places that had negative entities. I had one place like where I was at that was an old Charlie Chaplin house, and it's on film and it was all captured. Everybody else was attacked except for me. But I kind of went in warning the team I was with, saying, guys, someone's going to get shoved off of something. Like, I don't know. It's like, I see shoving and I see like almost like a cliff. But, the Hollywood Hills are stacked. So, and it was on the side of like a ravine cliff type thing. But I had no idea that what I was seeing was actually one of the production people who was filming. He got into his car to leave when we were done, and his car just went sideways, like something shoved it to push it down the ravine. He was able to get out of the driver's seat, which was facing down the ravine, and get out of the passenger seat and escape. And he was obviously incredibly shaken, and he looked at me and went, "Oh my God, Gabby, you were right. Did you see that?" I'm like, "Yeah, your car just went sideways for no reason. It was parked on stable ground. It was like something pushed it sideways." So whatever was in that Charlie Chaplin house was incredibly demonic. One person's shirt went on fire from a candle going sideways. And trust me, I went all over that candle looking for like a blowtorch type thing or something that would have done that. We all saw it just went sideways. And a couple of other people couldn't breathe. I had pressure in my chest, but I just kept backing it down because I only function in the light. And I function from a place of, why are you here? See, hauntings are about lessons. So if you get yourself into a haunted house, you buy a house that's haunted, hypothetically, you didn't know it was haunted. I mean, they're supposed to disclose this stuff, but how many people actually do? Why were you attracted to that house? Why did you buy that house? Like, and I'm going to give an example of this in a couple of minutes. But what I want to say is that it's about lessons and learning. And the other side is really not to be messed with. And Hollywood has done a great disservice to everyone who watches the boob tube without having a very strong constitution, moral fiber, ethical fiber. They've made it entertainment. That psychic readings are entertainment. Mediumship is entertainment. Ghost hunting is entertainment, rather than finding out the lesson of why there's a haunting and why were you attracted to that house, and creating resolution. So there's been a couple of really famous ghost hunting shows, and I think some of them did try to help the haunting, but really ineffective because they're not well versed. There's some ghost hunting shows that I think are a little bit more in integrity than not, but like most of these people end up not well. Most of these people end up like, look at the adventurers, okay, if you will. They've been sick, cancer scares. They go into properties and they're like, expletives about the demons, and they literally, you're poking the demon. They go in there, they yell at it. They're saying, show yourself, you coward. You really want to poke an interdimensional demon, like an interdimensional being? Like, what are you, dumb? You don't do those things. Like, I had a house that was really kind of amazing. So this woman who was a witch in Hollywood, she said that she would fix the house for the people that bought the house. Now, the house had been previously owned, and I'm going to get to that in a second, but the person went crazy in the house and then died. Suicide, I think. So with that said, that person, older than me, I didn't know she was helping with this house, and calls me, and her voice sounded so strange, lived up the street from me. I ran up there like, what the hell is happening? The front door was open. I walked in, and the person was on the floor, and they were like, couldn't move, couldn't really speak that well, and obviously something had taken them over. And I walked in and I stared at them, and she's like, help me. And I went, oh, no. I said, whoever you are and wherever you came from, go back to where you belong, because this is not your house. You don't belong here. You're not welcome here. And then as I was like going into you're not allowed to be here if we don't allow it. And then the entity faced off with me and said, well, she confronted me, and I came into her house because she confronted me and gave me permission to follow her. And I went, did you do that? She was like, well, yes. I'm like, what are you, nuts? You're supposed to know more shit than I do. I said, you never do that. You're poking the demon. So we finally got this entity off of her. He went back to his house across the street. And I said, what the fuck is going on? She's like, well, I'm supposed to be filmed tomorrow to help this family with their house. And I was like, uh-huh. She goes, I can't go in there alone. I can't handle it. Obviously, you can. And I went, okay. So, witchcraft is all about like daggers and bells and smoke, and I don't have tools because I don't believe in them. I believe in my faith in God and the faith of the universe and the faith in the gifts that were given to me. That's what I believe in. I have faith in my heart, which is, I don't go around looking for these things or provoking them. So that night I went home, and I walked the neighborhood with my then dog, Jin, who was very spiritual, my big black dog. He was amazing. And as we walk by the house, in the picture window, no joke, man, this being shows itself to me. I mean, Jin was even staring at, like looking up the hill, staring at it. And there was like a goat head with horns curled and then like a long cloak. And trust me, there was nobody playing dress up in that house. And there was nobody living in the house yet. And I was like, really? You're going to resort to Hollywood tricks with me? You're going to try to spook me with a skull? I said, please. I said, take your shit and, back up. I said, I'm not afraid of you, but I want to find out what's going with this family, because why are you all attracted to each other? That's all I want to find out. I don't care if you're here. I was like, you're an interdimensional being. I don't think I'm better than you. I don't think God's going to deal with you, but I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm just a person. So the next day we go in, and I did feel pressure on my chest, and everything was being filmed. And of course my friend's running around with her bells and her daggers, and I was like, she was just pissing it off. And as I stood there with the family, there was 2 parents, a small child, and then a grandmother was there. And it was the little girl that kept seeing him. And so I stood there, and I actually kind of got a feel for him. And I'm going to talk about this in another YouTube video. You can control what you see and what you don't see. No matter how gifted you are, no matter what your gifts are, you can control it all. So a long time ago, I dealt with that. And I see what's appropriate, but nothing that's harmful. And I was really specific with God and my angels, whatever gifts you've given me, there's I don't want to be like that poor little kid in I see ghosts and be scared shitless at having a decapitated body walking around in spirit form. I don't want to see that stuff. That's not my purpose. I don't need to be traumatized to do my job. So as I sat there, I did kind of see the outline of the entity, and I could kind of see the entity. And the little 5-year-old looks at her mom and tugs at her, says, Mommy, she can see him. And I looked at the little girl and I went, ooh, another gifted starseed in little child form. And I looked at her and I said, you see him too? She said, yes. And I said, does he scare you? And she said, a little. I said, okay. I said, would you be okay if he left? If he had other things to do and no longer needed to be here? And she said, yes, I would be okay with that. I said, okay. And I looked at the family and I said to the grandmother, I said, would you mind taking your granddaughter out of the house? And, my friend's looking at me like, what are you doing? This is all great video. I was like, it's not about video. It's about understanding what's going on here, and not about ego, and not about a TV show. It's about helping this family, because this is some serious ass stuff. So the grandmother took the granddaughter outside, and then I looked at the parents and I went, who's the drug addict? And I swear to God, the wife's face fell to the floor. And she was like, nobody knows about that. And the husband just kind of looked at me as well. And I said, well, the reason I'm asking is because the entity said the person who lived here before was an addict. And obviously your frequency is still in that addiction frequency, because that's what attracted you to the house. I said, did you use around here? That's what he's saying. You used to use around here. She goes, 20 years ago, I would use down on Cahuenga in Hollywood, which was just a mile down the road. And I was like, so that's why he's here and hasn't left after the last person died, because you were attracted to the energy of this house, because you still have that, imprint on you. And she said, well, what do we do? And I said, oh, it's simple. And I looked at my friend. I said, can you stop ringing bells and cutting the air? All you're doing is pissing them off. I'm getting somewhere here. You need to stop. She got mad at me, but she did stop. And I looked at the producer and I said, do you intend on using again? She's like, never since I had my daughter, never would I use again. And I looked at the entity and I said, did you hear that? And the lights started flashing in the house. And I said, okay, so if this woman's not going to use again, and the lesson has been learned, and the lesson is done, because the previous person is dead and gone, what are you doing here, dude? You have no reason to be here. All you need to do is go back to whence you came. If it's Satan, go back there, and he'll give you your marching orders about another person that actually needs you to learn their lessons. Do we have an accord? Do we have an agreement? And the being was kind of shocked. He goes, You're not going to use holy water? And I said, yeah, that's been done before on you, huh? He goes, yeah. And I'm like, no, it's not about that. It's about the lesson. You're here to teach something, and it's an ugly lesson, and it's an unhappy lesson, and it's a terrible lesson. And the last person failed it because they ended up dead. So, but these people are a solid family, and they're based in light, and they don't need your lesson, and they don't want you here. I said, do you want him here? And they're like, no, we would like him to leave. I said, do you hear that? You're not wanted here. And you certainly have no reason to be terrifying their child. And the lights flickered again, and the entity left. And the wife started crying. And she said, can I hug you? And I was like, okay, sure. I was like, I really don't like to be touched by people I don't know, but I understand your inclination to hug me. She said, that was amazing. You don't know about me. You don't know who I am. You don't even have my name. I said, no, but they do. I don't, but you do. They do. And I was just, I'm glad I could help and be of service. My friend was really pissed because she wanted to run around cutting the air. That's not the way to do it. So the grandmother brings the child back in, and she looks at me and she goes, Mommy, she's an angel. Look at the light around her, Mommy. And I've gotten this from kids more times than I can count. And I said, well, sweetheart, I'm not an angel. I wish I was. That would be fun. I said, but God's given me a lot of gifts, so that's the light that you see are my gifts, and I'm supposed to use them to help people. And the little girl was hugging my leg, and she's like, I'll never forget you. And I was like, well, I said, is he still here? Do you still feel him? No, he's gone. You fixed it. And I said, good, I'm glad. I said, I'm glad I could help you and your family. And you're a very brave little girl for telling your parents something that was very scary and no one would believe. She goes, no one wanted to believe me. I said, well, they did. And then they got help. And she said, they found you. And I said, yes, they found me. I happen to live down the street. My life has been a little bit like touched by an angel. I have moved to some very dark centers, and I go where I've been told to go, whether I like it or not. I hate cities. Los Angeles was very hard on me, and it was very unhappy for me. But all the good that I did in Los Angeles, I'll never regret. And I was told a long time ago I would be forced to travel for a long time and not have a home, and then only later in life, much later, would I be allowed to have a home base, but I would still have to travel till the end of my life. And now I'm 55 and I was allowed to have a home, and I'm really thrilled about that. So with that said, the grandmother comes back in. I'm looking at her and I went, wow. She goes, what? And I said, can I add some information? Are you guys okay with that? Again, I always ask for permission. I'm not a shock jock, and it's not about ego. And I'm not going to be like, some of the TV shows like the Long Island Medium. Oh my God, your mother's here. And people crying in the middle of the fucking store. It's inappropriate. And that's not about healing. And that's not about love. And that's not about God. And that's not about gifts. That's about being a shock jock. Don't agree with that. So I always ask for permission. I said to the grandmother. So I said, are you okay with some additional information? Are you all okay with a little bit of additional information? They're like, is it scary? And I was like, no, not scary at all. I was like, who's the man? I was like, there's a man here. And I looked at her, the grandmother, and I said, you didn't tell me if you're a widow or not, but I think you're a widow. And I think this is your husband. He's like a big grizzly bear, and but this warmth about him is huge. And he's a big man. And because this entity is left, he's allowed to come in, and he's like standing with you behind your granddaughter. And the little girl looked at me and she goes, you can see Granddad too? And I went, and I said, yeah. I said, I'm glad you can too. And she's like, I'm so happy my pop-pop's here. So, and of course then, the widow started crying, and she's like, he is here, isn't he? And I said, yes. She goes, I was feeling that. And I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to sound crazy. Folks, none of us were crazy. It's, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I have a delivery happening, so I just wanted to make sure my two dogs didn't go through the door. Bobo. So What I want to say is it's not about provoking or taking down entities. They're interdimensional beings, and some of them are really negative and some of them are Satan based. And yes, with God on your side, you can do pretty much anything, but you have to understand the rules, and you can't be in it for ego and glory. We all need validation. I love this particular story because I got hugged by the whole family. And yeah, I was seen as a weird little kid, and I've grown up embattled, even in my adult career. When I finally decided to ditch the traditional career and go with this, I've been embattled. You know, I even had partners that didn't believe in me and, you know, tore me down. It's been not easy being what I am. And, you know, finally now at 55, embracing everything so fully, I will never let anything interfere with my mission and purpose ever, ever, ever again. Because, you know, I want to do every time I have interfered with my mission and purpose, bad things happen to me. And I broke the left side of my body 2 years ago. Bad things happened to me because I wasn't in my authentic self, in my authentic happiness, and feeling really good about my life. So I can do that now, and I can spread the word, and I can help people understand what's happening in the world. I mean, the Schumann resonance, you know, today is Friday the 18th. I'm not sure what day it is. Maybe the 9th. It's Friday. It's this Friday, the 18th. And the Schumann resonance has been at 70 for 2 days. And before that, it was in the 40s. I mean, the planet's frequencies are going up. The veil between other dimensions and other timelines is very thin. So there's a lot going on, and a lot of karma is coming down, and people need to be very aware of this and know how to deal with it. And if you're on the journey, great. If you already are a believer and you want some, you know, additional help, connectedenergyhealing.com. If you are a very negative person and you're based in the 3D reality, well, then scroll on. You have no reason to listen to this, and this will not help you. And all it'll do is make you angry, and, you know, you'll be saying, oh, she's possessed by Satan and she's on Satan's side. Or you'll call me a sham or nonsense like that. Whatever. I wouldn't have the career that I have. And, you know, am I perfect? No, of course not. I've made lots of mistakes in my life, tons of them. But that's why I'm here learning too. I just have some other skill sets that I'm supposed to share in order to help others. So with all that said, if you have a haunting and you don't understand what's going on, come to somebody like me who doesn't treat it like entertainment. If I ever got a TV show about ghost hunting, or like a real estate show about clearing properties, it wouldn't be about entertainment for me. It would be about educating the public to empower people more, because we can all be empowered. Once you know the rules, you can totally be empowered. And everybody has the ability to be empowered. All right. Hope that helps some folks. I see a lot of darkness, but I also see amazing things of light, which I'm so grateful that I can see. And glad to be back on here sharing some stuff. If you have any questions that are positive in nature, that are authentic questions, please put them in the comments. If you post something shitty, I'll just delete and block you. No big deal. So I appreciate you all. And if you have want to book an appointment, if you're a real estate agent or anybody that deals with properties, or you have a home that's, you know, don't get ghost hunters. You don't need proof that shit's going down. You already know it's going down. Get help. Get real help. And don't go on these haunted tours. Don't go see these demonic objects. You are poking the demon. And when you think it's a Disneyland ride, let me tell you, you're going to get a lot more than you bargained for. So you can get sick, you can get cancer, you can go crazy, you can attract negativity. Look at that poor sod whose wife tried to kill him. There's so many examples of ghost hunting gone wrong, and ghost hunters that are ill, unhealthy, and everything else. 55, I'm getting better and stronger every day because I'm in my authentic self now. I'm so grateful for that. It took me a while to get back to myself. But I'm here, and I'm here long term, and The message is that everything is connected in your life. And if you have a haunting, don't go to a ghost hunter. Don't try to communicate with it. Don't try to gather proof. Just come to somebody like me. I'll ask you the questions. I'm like, did you check for a bad electrical system? It's the first thing I go for. I will ask all these questions, and be aware these things are not to be dealt with lightly. And please do not use Ouija boards. They are portals of demonic influence, and they've made them a game. Like how the 1% has sabotaged us with all this stuff. Amazing. Making it a game and making it incredibly dangerous. Your health and your life, your soul, all depends on you being very careful with this stuff. And it is not a game, and it is not entertainment. And I don't even watch movies. I've never watched Amityville Horror. I don't really like films. I don't. And, sometimes when I watch a ghost hunting show and I watch it, I swear to God, it's like about to watch a train wreck happen, because you can see these people doing what they think is entertainment, going, I'll take you on, demon. Come on and fuck with me. They're horrible. It's horrible. They're horrible people that are doing this. And they're perpetuating the negativity. And those are not people that should have TV shows. They just aren't. They're bad people. So don't follow them. If you have questions, follow people like me. All right, guys, connectedenergyhealing.com. Thanks again, and have a great weekend.